O Grupo Energy Telecom, através de suas 4 empresas, atua em todo o Brasil, integrando os principais serviços e soluções quando pensamos em tecnologia. Projetos de Public Cloud, comunicação unificada, Big Data, infraestrutura, Data Center, Client License, Cybersecurity e educação. Você pode contar com o Grupo Energy Telecom. Sempre a melhor solução.
Nós protegemos a tecnologia para você explorar novas realidades. Fazer o que quiser, quando quiser. Fazer amigos virtuais. Estar perto, mesmo estando longe. E conquistar novas fronteiras. Garantimos sua segurança digital para um futuro melhor. Kaspersky. Bring on the future.
Vale do Paraíba, uma região única com múltiplas vocações. A nossa é a tecnologia, é a inovação. Nós somos a NIP-BR. Trabalhamos para integrar, conectar, expandir, informar, entreter. A NIP-BR é solução corporativa, é internet, TV por assinatura, é telefonia digital. Os melhores serviços com o melhor custo-benefício. NIP-BR, sua melhor opção em internet, telefonia e TV por assinatura.
Você é daqueles que acham que ser moderno é ter um aplicativo para cuidar do seu dinheiro? É também. Agora, moderno mesmo é fazer parte de um grupo de pessoas que cooperam e crescem juntas.
Tem gente que acha que um bom atendimento é ter um gerente pronto para te ajudar. Nada mal, né? Mas pra gente ter voz e participar das decisões relacionadas ao nosso dinheiro.
Tem gente que acha que somos um banco. Somos muito mais. Somos feitos de valores.
Our infrastructure and natural resources can't keep up with growing demands. We need to be smarter. We need to care more. It's time to create smart infrastructure. We can because we connect energy systems, buildings, and industries to adapt and evolve the way we live and work for the good of the planet and the people. Creating environments that care. Smart infrastructure from Siemens.
A maior rede de pesquisas do mundo, com 5,5 bilhões de acessos por dia. Uma rede social avaliada em 70,7 milhões. Sabe qual a semelhança entre essas empresas? O investimento em softwares e algoritmos inteligentes. Tinova e SPS.
Na era da transformação digital, a Tria Software é o seu parceiro ideal. Trabalhamos com a aplicação de solução em software padronizada ou sob medida para melhorar o desempenho dos processos de sua empresa. Tria Software.
Bom dia para você. Seguimos aqui com a nossa transmissão ao vivo do Parque Tecnológico de São José dos Campos, onde acontece nessa semana a 7ª RM Vale TI e também o 4º Fórum da Indústria Espacial Brasileira. Dessa vez, nesse ano, 2 eventos online. A programação de hoje da nossa feira é totalmente voltada para a indústria 4.0. Pela manhã tivemos 2 painéis e teremos mais 2 painéis à tarde, a partir das 13h15. E agora nós abrimos um espaço na programação da feira para a programação do Fórum da Indústria Espacial. Lembrando que as palestras, os painéis do Fórum são todos em inglês, então se você precisar, basta assinar esse ícone do globo, que fica aqui na parte superior dessa plataforma que você está conectado. Basta colocar ali inglês-português, português-inglês e assim você não tem problemas para assistir a palestra. Vamos então começar a dar início à programação de hoje do Fórum. Vamos chamar aqui o nosso primeiro painel. Os palestrantes vão falar sobre oportunidades para a cadeia de fornecimento espacial. Vamos ver se os nossos palestrantes já estão aqui posicionados. Good morning, temos palestrante hoje dos Estados Unidos, França e Paraguai. Hello. E a Caroline Colbert, que é brasileira. Ela é doutoranda em economia pela UFRJ e também pesquisadora da Escola de Guerra Naval. Um ótimo painel para vocês. A good job for you all.
Thank you and good morning for everyone. Welcome to another debate on the 4th Brazilian Space Industry Forum. And I am in charge of coordinating the discussion we are having from now on. So the space sector is a very complex area, especially in the 21st century, due to the emergence of private companies and developing countries in this game. We cannot think about the sector like a regional or a national area. This space value chain is a global chain, and the companies need to prepare their strategy thinking on how to access it. For our discussion today, we invite Ibi Romero from Paraguay Space Agency, Ian Seltman from Space Florida, and Ian Perrott from PwC from France. Starting our discussion, we would like to invite Ibi Romero. No, I'm still not hearing you. Okay, the next one is Ian Seltman. Can you speak, please?
Sure, can you hear me?
Yeah, I'm hearing you.
Great. I can start if that's all right. Great. Well, thank you so much for having me today for this panel. My name is Erin Siltman, and I'm a business development engineer with Space Florida. I'm going to give a brief introduction to Space Florida and talk about what we do that can help companies in the space value chain who are looking to establish a presence in Florida or expand your operations in the state. So for a little bit of background about Space Florida, we were created by Florida's statute in 2006 as an independent special district of the state of Florida to be the single point of contact for state aerospace-related activities with federal agencies, the military, state agencies, businesses, and the private sector. So talking a little bit more about our role, we support the sustainability and growth of the aerospace industry throughout the entire state of Florida. So this chart gives a brief overview of all of the things that we are involved in as a spaceport authority, which you see on the left side there, and as our role as industry developers in the state, which we think this is what makes us a unique group within the state with our access to capital markets for funding as well as tax efficiencies in the deals that we can do with companies. And we'll get a little bit further into some of our unique tools here in the next charts. We, Space Florida, are located in Florida on the Space Coast, just outside the gates of Kennedy Space Center. And we are in the Space Life Sciences Lab, the building you see there on the right. We're located within 1 hour of Daytona Beach, Orlando, and Melbourne, which we like to think of as a technologies triangle within the state, as all cities have major universities with aerospace programs, engineering programs, as well as major airports, so easy access to all 3 locations. While we're located on the Space Coast, we do business throughout the entire state of Florida. So we're not limited by any geographic location. And we work with all kinds of companies, from small startups to publicly traded companies that are already located within the state currently, or are located somewhere else in the United States, and even elsewhere from around the world. So I said we would talk a little bit about Space Florida's unique tools. And we'll get through these 4 tools that we like to use to help companies establish their presence in Florida. So our first tool is Florida Department of Transportation funds for common use infrastructure. Within the state of Florida, space is considered a mode of transportation, just like airports, rail, roads. So the state allocates funding for space, just like they do to build bridges and upgrade utilities. So Space Florida manages the funding that the state allocates for spaceport improvement. We've been allocated upwards of $20 million annually to use for these common use infrastructure projects. And the more projects we work on, the more funding we get. So it's getting closer to $50 million annually that we're able to use to co-invest in common use infrastructure with other companies in the industry. So these funds, some examples of what these funds can be used for include roads, buildings, upgrading utilities, establishing new utilities. And there's some examples here on the chart of what these funds have been used for currently. So you'll see Blue Origin, their manufacturing facility in Cape Canaveral. You'll see their SpaceX use these funds to upgrade Launch Complex 39A for the Falcon 9 and Falcon Heavy launch vehicles. Number 3 is Space Florida's Launch and Landing Facility, formerly the Shuttle Landing Facility. There's also OneWeb Satellites who use these funds to help build their manufacturing facility and integration facility, as well as Space Launch Complex 46, which is Space Florida's multi-user launch facility. Another tool that we have is access to unique property and facilities throughout the spaceport. So some examples of these include the Launch and Landing Facility, SLIC 46, our multi-user launch site, the Space Life Sciences building where our offices are located, and Exploration Park, which is a development that includes Blue Origin, OneWeb, and Firefly. I'd like to talk a little bit more about the Space Life Sciences Lab because this may be a good option for companies who are looking to start an expansion to Florida or set up a US presence. It's currently where, like I said, our office is located, but there are also additional offices and cubicles that can be leased out to companies to establish a US presence. And as well, we have wet and dry labs available for hardware testing and integration. So this can be a good stepping stone before finding or building a suitable facility that's specific to a company's needs. We find that a lot of times this is a good way to get a foot in the door and be able to then not have to rush to develop something quickly or find something else quickly so that you can find something that really meets your needs. Additionally, at the launch and landing facility, we have 400 acres available for commercial use on the aviation side near the runway, as well as on the land side. We're developing a utility corridor to be able to provide access to power and utilities for companies that want to develop on the air side, which would be things like hangars for aircraft or spacecraft, and then on the land side, manufacturing facilities, integration facilities, or office space. So these are good areas for development. All right, this is one of our more unique tools that we can use to help companies establish a presence in Florida. And that's conduit financing and synthetic leasing with real property and personal property. So this helps turn upfront capital expenditures into operating expenses for companies with facilities and equipment. So what do we mean by this? We would enter into a long-term lease for long-term use of those assets. This helps get the assets off of the company's books, which provides some accounting advantages and tax efficiencies. Because through our statute, Space Florida is exempt from property taxes. So this helps then pass those savings on to the company. In this situation, Space Florida goes out to the market to secure funding for the facility construction or purchasing of equipment. And then the banks look through Space Florida to the company for terms of the lease and the company's ability to pay. The banks that we work with are very familiar with this structure and the advantages, so they're more than willing to work with companies to set up a lease structure that makes the most sense for them. With this structure, we can help buildings on special.
Yeah. Please, they are doing the translation, and they aren't. So talk slowly, please. They are doing the translation. Okay? Could you talk slowly?
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you.
So as I was saying, we can help finance this structure on special dirt, which we like to use that term, but that really just means any real property on NASA territory, airport authority territory, or city or county territories. So that's where we can apply the structure for buildings, real property, but we can apply the structure for equipment anywhere throughout the state. It doesn't have to be located on NASA or Air Force Station spaceport property. So this can help then set companies up with a built-to-suit facility with the required equipment necessary to run the facility at an under market lease rate. So this can help companies establish an efficient presence within the state for aerospace. Talking a little bit about the tax efficiencies, like I said before, we have, through our statute, property tax efficiencies as well as tax breaks on equipment and construction materials. So this helps keep those assets off of the company's accounting books, but allows the company exclusive use of the equipment and the facility. Lastly, we have a small fund available of $5 to $7 million that we break up into separate deals, usually $1 to $2 million, that can help companies help close loans or financing. We're not typically the first party in a fundraising round, but we can help close it out if it provides comfort to the venture capitalists as well as banks with loans. And we can even do small loans to help companies in various transactions of $1 to $2 million if it makes sense for the company and for Space Florida. So finally, thank you for the opportunity to talk about Space Florida. If you have any questions that I didn't cover or that we don't get to in the panel, please don't hesitate to reach out to me on LinkedIn or by visiting Space Florida's website and emailing the Space Florida email address. And I'd love to talk to anybody that's interested. Thank you.
Thank you, Erin. Your presentation was very enlightening. The next presenter is Ian Perez. Are you hearing us? Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Bom dia. And so I'll just wait for my presentation to show up. So I think maybe the presentation we've prepared is a slightly different angle. We will talk about the space trends on the market. And if you have more specific question about how PwC can work directly for you, of course, we're open to discuss that later. So just a quick word first on why PwC is invited to discuss about space. So you may know our company for tax issues and accountants and audit activities, but we also have a consulting branch. And in particular in Paris, we have a space team, about 20 consultants dedicated to space activities and space studies. So we built our legacy on public customers, such as the European Commission, the European Space Agency. And for these public entities, we provide socioeconomic impact assessment. So basically, assessment of economic impact of the space program, as well as social impact, environmental impact, or strategic impact. We also work with the private industry, with a lot of different companies in space, all across the value chain and the space domains. And for these companies, we provide more strategic analysis. So that could be market sizing, go-to-market strategy, support to portfolio definition, or competitive landscape assessment, for example. Our team also developed a data lab recently, which is the team dedicated to the development of technical solution exploiting space data, mostly Earth observation data, in order to deliver geospatial products, for example. The best example we have is one for the agriculture sector, supporting precision farming that we developed for the European Commission. Okay, so that was about PwC. Now I prepared some slides about the main trends in the space sector. So of course there is a lot of different domains and a lot of different topics to cover, so we won't be able to talk about everything. We will do a focus on a couple of macro trends first, and then a couple of trends on Earth observation and access to space, just to give you an example of what we provide in our study and the kind of assessment that we perform for our customers. Okay. So first, in terms of macro trends, of course, there's the COVID-19 crisis that is in all the minds at the moment. So we assess the impacts on this on the space supply chain. There are three main types of impact that we can remember. First is the direct operational impact. So the crisis, of course, has slowed down a lot the production of the supply chain, has led some factories to completely stop or sometimes just slow down the activity. And there are some substantial delays linked to that, depending on the sectors. So the whole supply chain is affected by these delays. The second type of impact is financing issues. So all the private investment has been reduced, and there's more cautious now on this investment. This firstly affects the startups, of course, which have higher sensibility to cash flows and a smaller liquidity amount. And third impact I can mention is the impact on public policies and public budgets, because the the crisis has shed some light on the fragility of some activities. Public budget will be affected in some of the space sector. On the right side, you can see a scale of how these different space domains are affected, more or less. Some of them are really strategic and will not be affected that much, such as SSA or the access to space. Other sectors like space exploration are more affected by the public budget decrease. Another macro trend that we thought was worth mentioning is the digital technology drivers. So the space domains are more and more exploiting these digital levers. Among them, we can cite, of course, the cloud computing technologies. Today, they are more and more widely spread in the different space domains, in particular in the downstream segment. This enables a lot of new business models to be implemented, and a lot of startups and new companies rely on these tools to be more time efficient in their solution. There's also the machine learning, which enables to process a lot of data and gets real insights out of the space data, which is, we will see later, a huge differentiating factor, in particular for the Earth observation domain. Regarding the upstream, of course, the additive manufacturing is one of the key technologies that is growing at the moment in the space sector. We have all the Rocket Lab example in mind, and this is also something that can be widely impacting the rest of the space domains with time. So these are two examples of major trends, macro trends, let's say. Now we can do a quick deep dive into some of the space domains. So first, the Earth observation. So this is not one of the major space markets in the overall space economy. It represents about 12 billion euros out of the total space economy. However, the interesting part about Earth observation is the fast-growing downstream segment. So today it's evaluated around 3.4 billion euros globally. And this was below 2.8 billion just 3 or 4 years ago. So you can see that there is a huge growth. This is mostly linked to the fact that there is a huge number of applications for Earth observation products. You can see at the bottom of the slide examples of industries using these data. So of course, agriculture, fishing, energy utilities, energy infrastructures, all these domains use a lot geospatial data. Defense programs are also a huge consumer of such data and a big driver for the growth of this market. So what are the basically different trends driving this change? So I will not go through all the details of the slides. As you can imagine, I assume the content will be distributed afterwards. But I will just focus on the key messages. So first observation, there is a new market dynamics linked to the adoption of cloud-based and big data analytics, or let's say analytics in general. So the downstream market is more and more driven by companies differentiating themselves by the added value they provide to raw space data and the way they're able to extract useful information for companies, useful insights, in order to be exploited in all kinds of industrial domains. So this, of course, echoes the digital tools trend that we mentioned just before. Another interesting aspect is the ground segment as a service. So it's the exploitation of existing ground stations and existing ground infrastructure to deliver the final products. So companies are able to not manage this ground segment and rely on existing companies providing it. This also enables to benefit from the knowledge in data processing, data storage, and added value services. And as for the past years, there is still a dynamic of verticalization of the supply chain and of the value chain, meaning actors in the EU sector tend to be operating the space infrastructure and delivering the products down to the downstream segment. So they're not only satellite operator or only product, they don't only develop product, they can do both, and this is the main approach to optimize their cost, basically. Okay. Then, in terms of access to space, a few words as well. So there's a lot of activities going on in the launch industry at the moment. You can see here examples of the launch activity in the past years, with of course domination of Soyuz still, but also you can't see it because it's not dynamic, but of course quick catch up. And the quick catch up on the US side with Falcon and on China side. There is a lot of activities, of course, going on in the main 6 spacefaring nations: the US, Europe, Russia, China, Japan, India. But we will see that there's also a major trend now to have a wider range of countries contributing to this market, especially through micro launchers. So in terms of trends, for this launcher market, there are different things. First, on the market trends, of course, the most visible one, I would say, is the cost reduction and the cost optimization using reusable vehicles and exploiting the modularity between the vehicles, so developing one module that can be used on different models of launcher. Of course, the Falcon 9 is a great example of how reusability can now be already mastered and leads to optimizing the market prices. In parallel, there is the miniaturization of these launchers with the development of micro launchers. I will get back to that just after with a dedicated slide. In terms of governance, in the past years, there's been a huge interest from the private sector for the launchers market. Traditionally, it was publicly driven. And now we see that there's more and more private companies building their own system and even relying on their own funds to do so, so taking all the risk and not only relying on publicly funded initiatives and research programs. Of course, the best example the most known example are SpaceX or Blue Origin, but there's also a lot of companies in other continents, especially in China, and also on the micro launcher side. And finally, on technology trends, we have all the new vehicles being developed, we said, for the micro launcher segment, but also for the heavy and super heavy in the future for space exploration, and the development and the democratization of the methane-based propellant for also economic reasons. Now, just the last focus on the micro launchers. So there's a lot of discussions and activity going on around that. The key messages, I think, is that there is a lot of projects going on. A lot of them also fail. So it's very fragile market at the moment, and there's a lot of challenges on the actual market access for these launchers. What is it of these launchers? It's the fact that there is a growing demand for microsatellites and small satellites. So we're talking about satellites below 500 kilograms. And these satellites are usually launched as piggyback on heavy launchers. These micro launchers offer more flexibility, more tailored service to these satellite operators, meaning that you don't have to wait for the launch window of the big rocket to launch your own satellite. You can pick the right orbit and the right plans and so on. So there is a demand that is growing for these launchers, and we can expect that this will be a key driver in the coming years. So that's it for my presentation. Of course, as I said, there is a lot of content. I hope I managed to pass some key messages, and feel free to reach out afterwards if you want to have more details.
Thank you, Ian, for your presentation.
My pleasure.
The next speaker is Ibe Romero from Paraguay Space Agency. Ibe, can you hear us? Okay, we are not hearing Ibe. So let's start with the questions of the listeners for you, Erin and Ian. I would like to thank you for this discussion, and this contemporary discussion about new space is very important for us to think about global insertion and also about the Brazilian placement in international markets. Now we are open to questions, and please write your question on the chat. So then I read it for the presenters. The first question is for you all, asking this space sector value chain is increasingly becomes global. What policies are essential for companies to create competences to be international suppliers?
Okay, I don't know if I should go. Anyway, maybe I'll try to start. So I think it's a tough question. In terms of companies' policies, I don't think there is any particular issues as long as it's not linked to the national policies. So we know there are some countries favoring national entities for their programs, favoring the exploitation of national assets and national companies when delivering space services. It's true for the launcher market, of course, but it can also be felt on the other segments like SATCOM and Earth observation, navigation, and so on. At company level, I think the only thing that can be done in a way is to make sure that the competencies that are acquired by the company, that the target skills and products that are developed represent something that is based on a global demand. And I think this is something that you can find on many space domains that are developing in the downstream market. So I talked a lot about the Earth observation domain. I think it's one of the most obvious segment for that, because there is a lot of different applications that you can find globally, and that every country at some point starts to exploit for its national needs and for its national strategy. So if you can develop some skills and some products, let's say for agriculture, for border management, for national security, you will be able to export these products nationally and also to export them at global scale. And I don't think there is any barrier other than a national preference to exploit these products and to sell them at global level. So this of course is true for other segments like telecommunications. We see a lot of interest now for IoT applications, Internet of Things, a lot of interest for machine to machine, for internet by LEO constellations. So any company able to deliver some added value services in these sectors has access to a potential demand at global scale, and for sure we find opportunities in many different countries.
Irene, do you want to say something to conclude?
I would like to agree with Ian that I'm not aware of any specific qualities that a company needs to have expand internationally. I will say, as far as national security space is concerned, there are restrictions there, but of the players that launch industry outside of just launch vehicles, they're huge to expand. And like I said, at Florida, we work with companies, very in the state of Florida to working with international companies.
Thank you. The next question is for both you. The space applications is a main segment of the space sector with a lot of players. How could the government help the companies to improve their competencies to compete on international markets?
So one first element I think that is important is the possibility to be involved in international cooperation schemes first. I think every country, including Brazil, is part of cooperation schemes at continental level, I would say. And usually there are some initiatives between countries that require different skills that lead companies to cooperate together and to exchange on their know-how, on their tools, on their assets, and expand a lot the individual knowledge of each actor being part of these initiatives. So in Europe, we have something very similar with the European Commission. There are a number of research programs or operational programs. For example, we can cite Copernicus, of course. There is a lot of cooperation initiatives on the downstream where different actors from different countries work together to build a product, work together to find a given solution. And I think this participates a lot to sharing the competencies, sharing the unique skills of everyone, and being aware of what the others are doing. And I think that's one of the main vector to be growing and to be aware of the international standards, basically, of the solution that exists.
I will pass to the next question. Is for Erin. Florida is investing a lot on space sector. California and other states too. How do you see this competition? I think Erin is with some problem in her connection.
Yeah. Well, it's a good thing that my connection works at least.
So let's for the next question for you, Ian. How do you think that Brazil can participate more efficiently in the space industry?
Can participate more in sorry, what?
In space industry.
At global level,
space sector. Yes.
Well, as I said, I think there are mainly two vectors. One is the development of skills that can be exported to other countries because there is a demand for that. I think the current I'd say that embrace of the downstream for EO, for SATCOM, even for positioning services based on existing GNSS constellations, for space situational awareness. There's a lot of different potential applications that are required, exploited in the world. So I think the first lever is to develop these products, maybe at the scale of Brazil, and then export them because there is a demand anyway. The second lever is to use the support of maybe the government, of local authorities, or transnational authorities in South America to make a link between the companies in Brazil and the companies working on similar topics around the world, and to build upon these links, first on the technical solution, of course, to develop, let's say, hard skills, and second on the existing initiatives that exist at the international level, which require to bring solutions that Brazil can deliver. So I would say on one side there is a purely market push on what the companies in Brazil can do and can sell outside. For that, targeting the application segment, Earth observation, SATCOM, navigation and so on, looking at the new trends on digital tools, cloud services, analytics, and exploiting them. And secondly, collaborating with the authorities and the institutions at national level to bridge towards other initiatives.
Thank you a lot, Ian, for your presentation, before sharing more knowledge with us by answering all these questions. I would like to thank Erin too, that had some problems with her connection, and Edie that it didn't appear that had some problems with her audio. But I would like to thank all the listeners for their questions and for their interest by the theme. Keep watching and participating in the next presentation of the 4th Brazilian Space Industry Forum. And once again, thank you very much. Ian, thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you all. Thank you, Caroline.
Thank you, thank you. You are so grateful with this panel. We had a problem, but you are so commitment with this job. Nice day for you. Bom, e a programação do fórum continua. Daqui a pouquinho, às 14h, a gente vai ter mais um painel como parte aí da programação do Fórum da Indústria Espacial Brasileira e vamos falar sobre novas aplicações espaciais para os negócios. Então, mostrar como a tecnologia espacial pode ajudar a indústria, a agricultura, a comunicação e diversos outros serviços. É daqui a pouquinho, às 14h.
O Grupo Energy Telecom, através de suas 4 empresas, atua em todo o Brasil, integrando os principais serviços e soluções quando pensamos em tecnologia. Projetos de Public Cloud, comunicação unificada, Big Data, infraestrutura, Data Center, Client License, Cybersecurity e educação. Você pode contar com o Grupo Energy Telecom. Sempre a melhor solução.
Nós protegemos a tecnologia para você explorar novas realidades. Fazer o que quiser, quando quiser. Fazer amigos virtuais. Estar perto, mesmo estando longe. E conquistar novas fronteiras. Garantimos sua segurança digital para um futuro melhor. Kaspersky. Bring on the future.
Vale do Paraíba, uma região única com múltiplas vocações. A nossa é a tecnologia, é a inovação. Nós somos a NIP-BR. Trabalhamos para integrar, conectar, expandir, informar, entreter. A NIP-BR é solução corporativa, é internet, TV por assinatura, é telefonia digital. Os melhores serviços com o melhor custo-benefício. NIP-BR, sua melhor opção em internet, telefonia e TV por assinatura.
Você é daqueles que acham que ser moderno é ter um aplicativo para cuidar do seu dinheiro? É também. Agora, moderno mesmo é fazer parte de um grupo de pessoas que cooperam e crescem juntas.
Tem gente que acha que um bom atendimento é ter um gerente pronto para te ajudar. Nada mal, né? Mas pra gente ter voz e participar das decisões relacionadas ao nosso dinheiro.
Tem gente que acha que somos um banco. Somos muito mais. Somos feitos de valores.
Our infrastructure and natural resources can't keep up with growing demands. We need to be smarter. We need to care more. It's time to create smart infrastructure. We can because we connect energy systems, buildings, and industries to adapt and evolve the way we live and work for the good of the planet and the people. Creating environments that care. Smart infrastructure from Siemens.
A maior rede de pesquisas do mundo, com 5,5 bilhões de acessos por dia. Uma rede social avaliada em 70,7 milhões. Sabe qual a semelhança entre essas empresas? O investimento em softwares e algoritmos inteligentes. Tinova e SPS.
Na era da transformação digital, a Tria Software é o seu parceiro ideal. Trabalhamos com a aplicação de solução em software padronizada ou sob medida para melhorar o desempenho dos processos de sua empresa. Tria Software.